Episode number 25. You are listening to the More Than a Lawyer podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help lawyers and mums to thrive in their careers and motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversation with awesome women to help you reduce the struggle in your juggle. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share with you some information about a tool that I absolutely love, Audible. If you're anything like me, you love to read books and learn new things, and you probably have loads of books on your reading list, but finding the time to read those books is a problem. You're busy with work, you're busy with children, you're busy with projects, so sitting down to read through the pages of a book seems like a bit of a luxury. So if that's you, I encourage you to check out audiobooks with Audible. You can download the books to your phone or your desktop, and you can listen to them while you're doing other things. So when you're doing your chores, when you're driving, commuting, playing with your baby, playing with your children, whatever it is you're doing, you can still read books and take in awesome information. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's been a game changer for me since I signed up for a membership a few months back. I've read so many amazing titles and learned so much. So I've partnered with Audible to give my listeners a free 30-day trial. So you can download a free book and you can choose from a range of titles in their expansive library. And all you need to do is head over to www.lightboxcoaching.com/audible to sign up for your free trial. Hello and welcome to the show. It's great to be back with you again. On today's episode, I speak to Murphy Daley, who is the founder of Pregnant Professionals, a resource for pregnant women preparing to go on maternity leave. So in this episode, we talk about her stepping away from her corporate career to start a family, the difficulties she faced with navigating maternity rights, and why she wrote a book as a resource for other mothers facing similar challenges. All right. Hi, Murphy. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I'm excited to have you. It would be awesome if you could introduce yourself and tell our listeners a bit about you.
Hey, Janine. My name is Murphy Daley. I'm joining you from Los Angeles, California, and I am the founder and owner of Pregnant Professional, which is a program to support women who are pregnant and working. I've found that it's very complicated and shaky for women during their pregnancy to also manage their career, and both things are very important to many, many women.
Yeah. That is so true. I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm currently pregnant right now with my baby number 2. Thank you. And I'm also a professional. So yeah, it's just good to talk to you about kind of the work that you've been doing and what you're finding helps the people that you've been working with. So before we jump into that, can you tell us a bit about your journey and the transition into motherhood?
Sure. And I'm so excited about what you're doing too, Janine. I know we have similar missions, and I love that we're finding each other even across the ocean.
I know, it's so awesome. I love technology when it works.
Right. And it usually does once we work with it. Anyway, so what happened is when I'd been working in a career, I had been in information technology, and I had been a specialist in working on that and really enjoying it. And I knew that I wanted to be a mother, but I wasn't ready for it. I kept putting it off in order to continue to grow my career, and my career was so exciting. I didn't want to stop, as it were. But I decided in my 30s, okay, now it's time. And I, married my boyfriend and got it all going. And when I did it, I thought it would be simple. I thought, oh, there are all these procedures, lots of women do this, and I'll just do what everybody does. It turns out it was very complicated, and there was also a lot of like social currents and pressures which I had been unaware of before I started. So
Right.
I was like, I asked all the right questions. I did the work. I wasn't just waiting around, but when it actually happened, it wasn't what I thought it was. And I was like, this is way complicated. So when a dear friend came to me who was a similar situation, she was an MBA and very ambitious. She said, I'm pregnant for the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, Alina, I have to tell you a whole bunch of things. And I started to write it down, but it was so much information that I actually made it into a book and published
Ah,
that. The book is called The Pregnant Professional, a handbook for women who plan to work during and after pregnancy. And that's how this started.
wow, that's awesome. I love that you wrote it down and then decided to make it into a book, because a lot of people talk about or have writing a book on their bucket list, but
Ah,
it's kind of like yours came out of the fact that there was a need and it was a resource that you didn't find yourself. So it's great that you
yeah.
kind of put it together and then published it.
Yeah.
This is
To be
awesome.
fair, I actually had already published a book, so I kind of knew how that worked. So I'm like,
Okay,
oh, this happened. But
so
yeah,
you're also an author then.
I
We
am.
should we
I
should
am.
add to your introduction. um,
Sure.
so what are some of the things that surprised you about the way that the way that information was presented before, and what was
Mm.
really available for women who are in the stage of getting pregnant, because I guess, or being pregnant, because I guess you don't necessarily think about this until you're in that stage.
Yeah, it's
um
funny. You don't. You just think, oh, it's just something that happens. Like, before you have to get a passport, you never think about what it takes to get a passport and
mm.
this paperwork and this other thing and all the whatever. You don't think about it until you have to do it. So it's not exactly the same to to get
Yeah.
all the work for getting maternity leave sorted out. But uh, I think there's a bit of a difference too between the expectations in the UK and in America.
Mm.
Uh, it surprised me to discover that employers kind of have this I don't mean to be negative, but they kind of have this weird distrust.
Okay.
Like employers are obliged to give a lot of benefits to women who are leaving, and they're kind of like, you get this sort of impression that they feel like women might take advantage.
Mm.
And so they don't like give you all the information of what is available to you, which would be nice because I'm like, well, what if these things happened? It'd be nice to know that there are these uh, programs and things in place to go, okay, well, if I did have some sort of emergency and I had to go on bed rest, this is what happens. Um, what actually happened is when I called HR saying, hey, HR, this is what I'm expecting and this is what's going on, and where's the internal website or pamphlet about what's the process for this. He said, okay, we don't have one, but get a pencil, I'll tell you this. I'm like, are you
Wow,
kidding? This has to be like word of mouth. So it's like, what?
that's crazy. So
Yeah.
not all organizations have their act together in terms of having their policies properly
Say the
laid out.
majority, very few do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're in that situation where you're working for an organization that doesn't have things in place, what do you do? Because I know that the rights in the UK are probably different, what are different from the rights in the US. For our US listeners, what would be some of the things that they should know or think about when approaching maternity leave if their
Yeah.
organization isn't going to give them the information?
Well, this is important because it turns out that almost every single state is different. Every single state
Okay.
has slightly different. And if you go to my website, www.pregnantprofessional.com, I have a link for resources of where all of what all the states have.
Right.
But even more than just what the states have, each type of employer and your particular circumstance, like how long have you been there, etc., affects your maternity leave.
Okay.
But that's just what is your like legal protections, and legal protections are, you get what I encourage women, ask confidently, and remember, you are a trusted, valued expert in your field, and your employer needs you. So regardless of what like the legal, that the government says you have to do, understand that this is something you need from your employer, and your employer needs you very much.
Yeah.
So understand that you're valuable and approach it in cooperation with your boss and say, okay, boss, this is what's happening. I'm going to keep you informed. And also inform your boss. Make sure to let your boss know, um, I want to be here. Sometimes other people will say, oh, she's having a baby, she's never coming back.
Yeah.
And if that's what you want, absolutely do that. But if you like your career and you want your career for all the reasons that we like our careers, including a paycheck, um, let them know I'm here. I want to continue to do my job. I want the projects and the assignments that I've worked hard to achieve. So make sure to express that and let them know you're here, you're in it, and you want this. If you don't tell them, they're not going to know, and they may assume they're like helping you.
I think that's really important because it's easy to just assume a lot. And I think with your employer, it's really important to keep the lines of communication open. And so when I speak to people who are like maybe they haven't even got pregnant yet, but they're thinking about it in the future, it is very much realizing that you're going to be working in partnership with the organization to figure out a way that you can work flexibly, or that you can go back in a way that works for you. So you have to have conversations about it and be open and let them know so that they can plan. They still need to be able to plan what they're going to do in your absence, and then also so that you can know what to expect when you go back. So I think you're right, it's important to have that conversation and also be that you can ask for things, because sometimes people are reluctant to maybe ask for flexible working if they haven't seen anyone else in the department have it or do it or manage it. So yeah, just taking a bit of control is important.
That's such a big point of what you just said, taking control. I had this marvelous conversation with another woman from the UK. She was an antenatal educator, and she was talking about the actual birth process, which is outside of the scope of work, outside of the your employee relationship. But the actual birth process, she was saying that women who are in charge of their birth process, even if they experience something that could be like traumatic birth in the form of like a cesarean, a C-section or something like that, that if the woman is given choice and understands that this is her choice, she actually recovers faster. If you're taking control of your workplace and not having other people say, well, you really should, or you have to, well, then it's going to be uncomfortable for you. You're not going to be in charge of your career. And it's a really tender moment in a woman's life. Like, you don't necessarily feel the most empowered you've ever felt when you're pregnant. You're tired and you've got all these different body sensations, and your mind is affected too, because all this stuff affects you how you think, and so you may sort of feel pushed in different directions. But if you take the moment, which is what I really try to do with my program, if you take the moment and understand what your choices are, you're prepared in the event when it actually happens. Here's the choice I want, and you can push for it and be confident about it, and say, even if someone pushes back against you, say, well, actually you really need to XYZ, you could say, thank you for your concern, that's not my choice, please explain to me how we're going to do what I need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to realize as well that you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel once you have the baby. So making decisions while you're in the stage of pregnancy, you may not want to do, just say, this is definitely when I'm going to come back, or this is definitely what I plan to do. But if you've had the conversation and you've kind of set the expectations and you keep the lines of communication open, then you give yourself the space to kind of make a different decision later, but at least you've got the option. Whereas if you make it seem like, well, I probably won't want to come back, I'm sure I want to stay home with my baby, then you might have closed the door. So I think it's important to have the conversations and keep the lines of communications open.
And be aware of yourself, be aware of what you want, and keep your options open. And communicate. Also, when you're communicating with your employer, say, I'll let you know how things progress. They're aware too. They know. Stuff happens, and health things happen, family dynamic things happen, and they're aware too. But as you express your desire in the moment, your intention, then generally people will honor that a lot of the time. And if you don't express it, they can't honor it. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a bit about your experience with juggling being a mum and your career? So you obviously went back after having your daughter. So how has that looked for you? What are some of the challenges that you faced? And it would be good to hear about your experience.
Well, I so I had my daughter, and it was a relatively simple birth. I was induced, but that was whatever, and we were all fine. I was bored out of my mind with a newborn at home. I was like, oh, I did not enjoy it. I don't know, maybe because I was induced, I didn't get that cool baby high with all the oxytocin and like get all, googly over the smell of her head. I mean, I loved her, of course, but I was like, I have never been so bored. So I actually went to work a little bit early. She was not quite 3 months old, so just like a week or two early, and went back into work. I, pumped milk on the job until we were done. But I continued working. I actually worked really hard to make sure to not split, but to make my shift very early, because I wanted to be home to be with my daughter in the afternoon. She actually had like sleep. She didn't nap except at home. So when she was very little, we would take her to care and then take her home so she could have an afternoon nap. And so I be with her. And so I worked very early, starting at 6:30 a.m. and was able to come home in the afternoon and be with her. And I had to really fight my employer to get that. My employer was not particularly understanding, my boss. Anyway, I don't have that job anymore, but I worked there for a long time till she got to kindergarten, and then I had other jobs. So I've worked the whole time, and I have my husband works at home. He's an entrepreneur and he works at home. So it's been kind of nice that he's been able to do the things like take her to care and pick her up afterwards. So between the two of us, we managed to give her a lot of parental attention.
It's interesting because everybody's dynamics different between them, the mother and the father, and how they work and how they can make things work. So I think it's good to realize that you've got to find a groove that works for your family and what works for your baby as well, because your baby needs to be home to sleep, so that means you can't have you finishing late and her not being able to nap in the day. So there has to be some flexibility around like how things work, because I think sometimes we look at other people and say, well, that's how they did it, so that's how I have to do it. But actually there comes a point where you have to find your own way in terms of what's going to work for you.
It's different, and every child has specific things they need. And it's funny, women will get together and tell stories about this is what happened in my birth and I had this much labor, etc., etc. But I think it's really useful to also say, well, this is how I handled childcare. Childcare is important. And childcare, oh my gosh, Janine, childcare has like so many different cultural traditions. Like, this is how it's done at this place, and this is how it's done at this place, and different families. Some families are like, well, I couldn't have my child cared for by anyone but a member of the family. Like, I don't have that hang up, but great for you if you can arrange that. And also, but it's possible that a woman who comes from a family who feels that sort of pressure hasn't even thought about, there's other options that could be perfect for my child.
So it's I love that you said that, because it is like there's those kind of conversations need to be had more, because those are kind of the practical things that are relevant now, after you've had the baby, and then ongoing for however long until they go to school. So it's good. And after, actually, because after school they need to be picked up and stuff like that. So it's I think we need to have more conversations like that, to just be real about, okay, what does the logistics look like how do you guys make it work, so that you can see how it could potentially be done, and then figure out, okay, from that, what are we going to do.
And also, I mean, as women, we're becoming more and more fully realized in society. So, of course, for women who want to have a career and really have ambition for certain types of work, that's we're beginning to realize, of course that's possible, of course, but balancing that with motherhood is still a little bit jinky. It's still like, oh, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And it's kind of this separation. Well, I find it sort of amazing, Janine. I would not want to take a whole year of maternity leave that seems to be required in the UK.
It's
Like,
not.
oh, don't leave me home with my baby, please kill me.
It's not required. It's as in employers have to offer it. So how it works is that you get kind of the minimum, and then you can go to the additional, and the additional will take you up to around a year. And then if you add on the holiday that you accrue, because you accrue holiday during your year off as well, it comes to like a year. So I was like, yeah, I want to take my full year. Some other people will take 6 months and then go back, but generally it's like 6 months is probably the minimum that people will take, because the pay scale at around between 6 and 9 months, depending on your organization, then kind of drops down to a really low. But for me, I was like, I want to be off with my baby for a year. But then for some people, like you said, after a few months they're going crazy and they're like, I want to get back to work. So it just depends on the person. So it's not like you're going on maternity, you have to take a year. It's like you can take up to a year. But then I guess on the flip side, for people that are used to that, when you speak to, you know, people from your side of the pond and they're like, yeah, so I went back after 6 weeks, you're like, what? How did you do that? So it's just like you said about, you know, cultural norms and differences. It's really interesting that we have different approaches.
It's totally different. And just sharing stories, you know, it helps a lot. Isn't that what women are good at? They get together. Okay, so how do you do your laundry? How do you manage a company?
Absolutely. I love inspirational quotes, and when I come across something that just resonates with me, I tend to share it and tell people about it. So is there anything that you live by, like in terms of a mantra or quote or something that you tend to go back to?
I don't know about a mantra. That's an interesting question. But I just love freedom, and I think that everybody should have the freedom to pursue their heart's desires. And so I really wanted to have a career and work on big things, and that's so vague, but I wanted to do big things. So it was fun when I was working on a global network of video conferencing for a big firm, and I really loved that. And you know, I also have all these other things I do. I'm always working on a book. I'm also taking care of my family, and I'm taking care of my daughter. All of these things are big things, and these are my heart's desires. So for every woman, do what you're feeling, do what burns in you. And I want to support that. That's partly why a big reason why I do what I do with the Pregnant Professional, because man, women need that for themselves, and the world needs it too. Oh my gosh, the world is such a better.
I think it's so great that you said that, because I don't know, there's something about becoming a mother that opens up a whole world of opportunities. Like I feel like before I was a mum, I was more focused on what's the standard path or the way to do things. And then there's something about birthing a human and being like, I actually gave birth to a human. And if I can do that, then I could write a book, or I could launch a business, or there's so many things that I could create because I've created life or been part of the creation of life. And so, yeah, it's kind of empowering to know that opportunities are there. You just need to take them, and don't feel like you can't do something just because you haven't seen someone else do it before. So,
and boy is it ever an awakening to be a person who's like, okay, I'm going to follow the steps to achieve this goal that I think I want. Okay. And then I followed the steps. I wanted to have a child, and I'm like, okay, now or never. I'm getting older. Right. And so I had a child, and then you're like, oh, those steps, that path. Okay, there's not really a path. Stuff you can do, but a path of parenting is like, whatever. Like, well, um, just trying to get your baby to sleep, man. A lot of
Yeah,
people really path.
I know, and they don't follow. The babies don't follow the path. They've got their own agenda. So I literally, after a few months with my son, I just threw the books out the window and was like, okay, he hasn't read these books. I'm just gonna study him and just figure out his flow and how he works and just go with that, because I was just frustrating myself just trying to get him to fit in the box. And he's just his own little person. So yeah, I learned that pretty quickly.
And as we as mothers honor the personhood of our children, I myself learned a lot about honoring my own personhood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the
Oh,
individuality and yeah. And
definitely.
isn't that a fantastic thing to bring to an organization, a business,
Yes.
company? Like, of course, of course. Oh, I heard somebody say something. Another woman who's at home with her 2-month-old child. I talked to her this weekend. She said she was talking about networking as leadership, which I hadn't heard before, but I went, that's so cool. You network with people in order to lead.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's so amazing. And that's what we do. We
That
have to.
that is so
That's
true. And the networks that you build when you're, meeting other mums and other women, is you're going to meet people from all walks of life. And you connect with people in a different way when you have that in common too. So yeah, I think that's great. Network
and
leadership.
as mothers, we have to network with our child to go, okay, what do you need?
Yes.
Pre-verbal person, what can I help you with? And like understand, like, okay, I have to compromise. And that's so useful in the workplace
It
to
is.
understand that.
Negotiation is the
Yes.
key. Like right now, my son just turned 2, and my life is all about negotiation with him. And so
Mm,
for anyone who's taken a career break and they feel like, oh, like I haven't got the skills, just think about what you do on a day to day to just navigate life with a little person, and all of the skills that you've developed, and the patience and the resilience and confidence. There's so much that you will have developed through dealing with a little person and raising them, that
mm.
can definitely translate into the boardroom and into your day to day in the office. So
Right. Or your own business if that's what you want, because
yeah,
really powerful what we learn as parents.
yeah. Oh, it's been so good chatting to you. So if people want to
Yeah.
find out more about Pregnant Professional, where do they go? And do you want to share a bit about your course or your book?
Yeah, please go to my website, www.pregnantprofessional.com, and there's a ton of stuff there. I have a course that walks you through, I call it the fundamentals course, walks you through from before you're even pregnant to all the way back to returning to work. So that's awesome. And I'm developing smaller courses on specific topics as well for a deeper dive. You can get
Mm-hmm.
my book. And also, like I said, particularly for Americans, there's a resources page which has links for all the different information about legal rights for
Different
each state,
states. Mm-hmm.
and other great information. So go to my website and you'll find out a lot that is going to be really helpful.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's
Janine.
it's been great. So I'll put the links to your website in the show notes. It's been brilliant having you on. Thank you so much for sharing.
I really enjoyed that interview. Maternity rights and preparing for maternity leave is one of those things that you only really pay attention to when you need to know. And so when you need to know the information, it can be frustrating to realise that it's not readily available for you. That's why I think it's so great that Murphy has put together such a fabulous resource for pregnant professionals, and her website, her book and her course are all resources available to people. And I will share the links to those in the show notes. So head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 25 so you can access those. Now, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, well, I'm actually already on maternity leave and I am now thinking about returning to work, then I wanted to invite you to join us on the Smooth Return course, which is starting on the 29th of October 2017, and it's an online course for professional women who are returning to work who want to have a smooth transition. So the course has been specifically designed for you. It's split into modules, and we will be covering a whole range of things that you need to enable you to plan for a really smooth return and a positive return to work experience. So if this sounds like something you'll be interested in, then please head over to lightboxcoaching.com/smooth return course to find out more, and add your name to the waitlist, and we will be getting started in October. So if you enjoyed this episode, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review so that more women just like you can find this episode. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can connect with me by emailing me at janine@lightboxcoaching.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn or join the Being More Than a Lawyer Facebook group, where there are conversations ongoing about managing life as a professional and as a parent. So that's it from me today. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and until next time, look after you and look after your babies. The More Than a Lawyer podcast features music by Ben Sound.